Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel. Today we will study the module 2 of basics of research, and the module 2 is about defining a research problem. It also includes introduction to research question and investigation question. So let us start with what is research. Research is a systematic, methodical and organized investigation or inquiry which is designed to discover new knowledge, establish facts or reach new conclusions, right. So, research is an original contribution to the existing stock of knowledge through objective and systematic methods of finding solutions to problems. So, let us have a view about the characteristics of a good research. A research should be a systematic process, which means it follows an organized and logical steps while its conduction. Although these steps may or may not be having a rigid schedule, that is they may not be arranged chronologically, it can always be adjusted as per the requirement of the research topic. Next is empirical foundation, which means research should be based on observable evidence which can be collected. In other words, only having an opinion does not makes it a research. It is very important that whatever we want to study must be observable and collected so that it can be further analyzed using various research tools. Next is critical analysis. Research involves examining the findings and rigorous scrutiny by using various methods of research, right. Next, one of the most important characteristic of research is it should be verifiable and replicable, which means that whichever finding is found out by the researcher must always be available for verification, and if others wants to make a replica of that certain data or the research, it should always be there. Next is the objectivity, which means that the research must be conducted to minimize bias and maintain neutrality in investigation. In other words, whenever a research investigation is getting conducted, it is very important to minimize all the levels of errors which may be there in the form of bias and other opinions. Next is purposeful direction. Research must always address specific questions, problems or hypotheses. Hence, research can be exploratory, descriptive, analytical or predictive in nature, depending on its purpose and approach. It contributes to both theoretical understanding and practical applications across various fields. So, now let us see what is a research problem. Whenever a researcher wants to conduct certain study, it is very important that he must know what he wants to find out. For that sole purpose, it is very important that a researcher must have a research problem in hand. Hence, we can say that a research problem is that specific issue or a difficulty or contradiction or gap in knowledge that a researcher identifies as worthy of investigation. In other words, that merely having a problem does not makes it a research problem. It is very important that that particular area or subject must be capable of being investigated. Okay? It serves as the foundation and starting point for any research project. Obviously, when there is a research problem, then only that can be investigated further. So, it makes the basis of the entire research study. So, we can say that it identifies an area of concern where there is a gap in the existing body of knowledge, which means there must be an area or maybe a topic or something on which nothing has been done so far, or if something has been done, there must be some gap or maybe a weakness or something which makes the researcher thinks that that he wants to make further investigation on that particular topic. Then it requires a researcher to find a solution or answer. Merely having a research problem is not something concrete. It requires, and it is very important that the researcher wants to find a solution or an answer to that particular problem. Then it establishes boundaries for investigation. When you have a concrete solid research problem, it makes you focus that fine, you want to find the solution or answer of that particular problem. So it makes the research confined to a certain area. Hence it provides direction for various research activities. So let us see what all are the characteristics of a good research problem. First, it should be and it must be clearly articulated, and it should be precise and well defined in advance before actually conducting the research. Next is it should be feasible, which means that it is very important whenever a researcher takes up a research problem, it is he should be considering all the available resources and the time and manpower, so that the research can be actually practically done, or else there is no point of having a research problem. Then it should be significant, which means that it must address something or some issue or gap in knowledge. It should be original, which means that it must contribute something to the existing knowledge base. Then the researcher must always consider the ethicality of the research, and it must not violate any type of ethical standards. And last is it must be empirical testability. It should be amenable to empirical investigation, which means if someone else wants to reinvestigate certain research problem, the answer that they will find must also align with what the initial researcher found out. There is a certain process of formulating a research problem. It begins with identifying a broader area of interest of the researcher. Then the researcher must review the existing literature to find out where is that problem lying in the existing knowledge base which is available out there. It helps the researcher in finding out whether or not anything related to his research problem has already been done or not. Then it helps in narrowing down the focus to the specific aspects of that certain subject matter. It forms the basis of research, next research questions and hypothesis of that particular research. Then comes the last step is evaluating the problem's researchability and significance, which I already discussed. It means that whichever problem is getting finalized by the researcher must be capable of getting investigated, which means something can be done when it comes to that problem. It may be in the form of actually finding out the solution of the problem, or merely just elaborating the existing problem, but something should be added on to the existing knowledge base. Hence we can conclude here saying that a well defined research problem guides the selection of appropriate research methods. Then it helps in collecting data and analytical approaches of that research. It also serves as the compass for the entire research journey, ensuring that the investigation remains focused and purposeful. Let's take up an example to further elaborate what is a research problem. A research problem is a difficulty or challenge. We already established that. Okay? The researcher wants to solve that particular problem, that is also established. Now for example, let's take someone is facing a problem. Now there must be someone who is facing a problem, then only that problem can be considered as to be taken up as a research problem or not. For instance, if a teacher is noticing that the students are easily distracted in class, that is a problem, but this mere statement does not make it a research problem. So what else is required? It requires an action to be taken, which means that if someone is facing a problem, that something should be done for that research problem, and there must be at least two actions from which the researcher can choose which action can be taken up. For instance, in this example where students are easily distracted in class, the teacher might want to change the sitting arrangement, or maybe simply banning the use of smartphone in the class. Next is, if any one of these options are chosen by the researcher, different outcomes must be there, which means that, for instance, the researcher opts for changing the sitting arrangement of the students in the class, different output will be there, and if he chooses not to let the students use smartphones in the class, then different outcomes must be there, which hence it can be concluded that if the researcher is taking up one action to resolve the problem, different outcomes can be there. Hence it results into different chances of success, which means that if the researcher takes up a research problem and then he sees that there are certain actions that he can choose out of, then he will decide which to be chosen, and then he will decide the level of success of each outcomes, and then the solutions can be suggested. So we can conclude here that a research problem involves a situation, which means there must be someone who is facing the issue, and there are multiple options to address that issue, and those multiple options will result into different outcomes, and there are varying levels of success of each option. So the components of research problem includes there must be someone, maybe an individual or a group, who is having a difficulty. Next is, there must be some objective, there must be something to look up to, it can be a solution or simply an answer to that problem. If nothing can be done, it is pointless. Next is, there must be alternative means of solving that problem or simply obtaining the objectives that the researcher wants to attain, which means that there must be at least two means available to a researcher, for if he has no choice of means, there cannot be a problem, and there must remain some doubt in mind of a researcher with regard to selection of alternatives. If he already know that which alternative he will be choosing, then again the investigation is pointless. This means that research must answer the question concerning the relative efficacy of the possible alternatives. Now let us see what are research questions. When there is a research problem, the research problem is further classified into various research questions. This is a specific query that one wants to answer. So a research problem can be simply a declarative statement, whereas research question is a interrogative statement, which means it will always be in the form of a question. It is a specific query that the researcher wants to answer with the broader context of research problem. It is essentially a precise question that focuses on investigation. The example we just discussed, we can see here, we can change the research problem into research question by simply reframing the sentence by saying that, does the use of smartphone in class contribute to distraction among students? Now it became a question. The same research problem is reformed into the form of a research question, hence it became a research question. Now what are investigation questions? When we want to further elaborate about the research problem, we classify into different investigation questions, with the help of which the various aspects related to that particular problem can be addressed. For instance, in this example where we are trying to study the student distraction level in the class, we might want to create certain investigation questions, such as how often do students check the smartphones during the class, what type of activity do they get engaged while using that mobile phone in the class, or is there actually a correlation between smartphone use and student performance in the exams. There can be usually there can be more than 10-15 research investigation questions related to a research problem, so that possibly all the aspects related to a certain research problem can be. We can compare research problems with research question by seeing this particular graph. Here the definition says that research problem is a statement which identifies an area of concern or knowledge gap which needs to be addressed by the researcher, whereas a research question is an interrogative statement that seeks to explore or investigate a specific aspect of the research problem. Next, the focus, it identifies the broader issue of the topic that needs to be studied, whereas research question specifically targets a particular aspect of the research problem. Hence, the scope of research problem is broader and it encompasses multiple sub-issues or dimensions, whereas a research question has a narrower scope focusing specifically to certain aspect of the research problem. The format of research problem, as I already stated, is a declarative statement, whereas a research question is interrogative sentence. The role of research problem is that it forms a basis of the entire research study and it guides the entire research process, whereas research question provides a specific direction for the research study and helps in generating the hypothesis for that particular research investigation. Now, complexity, it can be complex because it is usually multifaceted and it covers the entire research investigation, whereas research questions are comparatively simpler as they focus on specific aspect or the relationship of variables in that research. So, that was all about the module 2 of our subject. I hope this helps you. Thank you.